8 started like any other afternoon, just me sitting on my porch, enjoying a bit of peace after a long week. The sun was out, the breeze was calm, and I was minding my own business. That's when she showed up, clipboard in hand, sunglasses too big for her face, marching up the sidewalk like she owned the place. The HOA lady, or as the neighborhood calls her, Karen *. She didn't say hi, didn't ask how I was doing, just jumped straight into telling me I had to leave my own porch. It's not compliant, she said, pointing at nothing in particular. I was still trying to process how someone could be that bold when she hit me with, if you don't move, I'll be forced to write you up. I was calm, respectful. I tried to explain, but she wasn't having it. Her voice got louder. Neighbors started peeking through their windows, and just when it felt like this situation was about to spiral out of control, something happened. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. Then another, and out stepped my Marine unit, all of us in full uniform. Karen froze. Her face went pale. She had no idea what was coming next. But you'll want to stick around, because what happened after that, you're not going to believe it. Now, before I tell you what happened next, let me give you a little context, because this wasn't the first run-in I've had with Karen. Ever since I moved into this HOA community, she's had something to say about everything. My truck was too loud. My American flag was too large. Even the way I mowed my lawn once got a complaint. She seems to think the HOA rules give her some kind of power trip. But this time, trying to kick me off my own porch. That crossed a line. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. The reason my unit showed up that day wasn't random. We had planned a surprise meet-up before a deployment ceremony, just some of my Marine brothers coming by to hang out, reminisce, and show some support. None of them knew what was going on with Karen until they stepped out of those SUVs and saw the tension in the air. And she definitely didn't expect a full group of Marines in uniform to appear like that. She stood there frozen for a moment, still gripping that clipboard like it was a badge of honor. Her eyes went from me, to them, back to me, but she still hadn't said a word. The silence was thick. And then, one of my brothers stepped forward. He didn't say anything aggressive. He didn't have to. Just stepped up, calm and steady, with that quiet presence Marines have when they know they've got nothing to prove. Karen flinched a little, still trying to process what she was seeing. He looked her straight in the eye and said, "There's a problem here, ma'am." That's when she finally spoke, but her tone had changed. Now she was trying to backpedal, talking about community standards and respecting property rules, but it was clear she was rattled. The rest of the unit stood nearby, not saying much, just watching. One of them whispered to me, "This her." I nodded. He shook his head, trying not to laugh. What made it even more frustrating was that this wasn't just about a porch. It was about control. About how some people use small positions of authority to make others feel small. And I've seen that before, in different places, under very different circumstances. The thing is, you don't expect that kind of behavior in your own neighborhood, especially not when you've served your country and just want to enjoy some peace. But there was more going on behind the scenes. One of my neighbors later told me Karen had been trying to get certain residents written up to make room for preferred buyers. That's when I knew this wasn't just personal, it was something deeper. So now we're standing there, me on the porch, Karen clutching her clipboard like it's going to save her, and my Marine unit just calmly watching everything unfold. The neighborhood had gone quiet. People were standing behind curtains, some even stepped outside pretending to check their mail. You could feel it, something was about to go down. Karen tried to shift gears. She turned to the group and said, "This isn't about you. This is a private matter between me and the homeowner." That's when one of the guys, a staff sergeant with a chest full of ribbons, calmly replied, "He's a Marine. We're all brothers here. If you've got something to say to him, you're saying it to all of us." You could hear a pin drop after that. And then she snapped. She started raising her voice, going on about rules, about how I was disrupting the uniformity of the neighborhood. She even accused me of staging the whole thing for attention. That's when one of my neighbors finally spoke up. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Asterisk, you've been harassing him since day one. We're tired of it." Asterisk. And just like that, more voices started to join in. Karen was losing control of the situation. Her face turned red, and she started calling someone on her phone, probably the HOA board. But what she didn't know was that the real storm hadn't even hit yet. Karen was still on the phone, pacing in tiny circles like she was the one under attack. Her voice was sharp and rushed. She kept saying things like asterisk unauthorized gathering asterisk and asterisk military intimidation. Asterisk, my guys just looked at each other, raising eyebrows. We weren't doing anything but standing there, quiet and respectful. But she was spinning it into something bigger, something it definitely wasn't. Then came the twist none of us saw coming. A silver sedan rolled up slowly and parked across the street. Out stepped an older gentleman, dressed sharp, with a familiar gait that told me right away. This guy had seen service too. He walked over calmly, nodded at my unit, and then turned to Karen and said, asterisk, Kim, the HOA board president. I got your call. Asterisk, the whole crowd hushed again. Karen rushed toward him, trying to take control of the narrative. She started talking fast, pointing at me, rambling about rules and violations and community image. But he held up his hand. Asterisk, I've been watching the security footage, asterisk, he said, calmly but firmly. Asterisk, and I've also been reading the complaints, yours and the ones filed about you. Asterisk. Her face changed instantly, like a switch flipped. She stuttered something about asterisk doing her duty, asterisk, but he cut her off. Then he turned to me and said, asterisk, can we talk? Inside. Asterisk. And that's when I realized this story was far from over. We stepped inside my house, me, the HOA president, and one of my Marine buddies who didn't want to leave me alone with whatever was about to go down. The president stayed calm, respectful, but you could tell he wasn't here just for a friendly chat. He sat down, looked me in the eye and said, asterisk, I want to apologize for the way this situation was handled and for how long it's been going on. Asterisk, that caught me off guard. I didn't expect that. He explained that several neighbors had come forward over the past few months with concerns about Karen, how she used her role to intimidate certain homeowners, how she targeted veterans, single parents, and new residents. There had even been a quiet investigation happening behind the scenes. Then he dropped the bomb. Asterisk, Karen's not even authorized to enforce violations anymore. She was removed from the board 3 weeks ago. Asterisk. I just sat there, stunned. All that yelling, all the threats, the clipboard waving, none of it meant anything. She had no power. Meanwhile, outside, Karen was still pacing, completely unaware. The president stood up and said, asterisk, we'll be sending a notice to every resident this week clarifying everything, including her status. Asterisk. I thought that was it, that the whole thing was finally over. But as he opened the door to leave, he paused and added, asterisk also, you might want to check your porch camera. We caught something else we need to talk about. Asterisk. And just like that, the story flipped again. Later that night, I checked the footage from my porch camera like the HOA president suggested. At first, it was the same stuff, Karen pacing, talking on her phone. But then, right before my unit pulled up, she walked over to my flagpole and tried yanking the flag down. When she couldn't, she kicked at the base and muttered something under her breath. That's what really got to me. It wasn't just about HOA rules. It was about something deeper. Disrespect. The next day, the board sent out an official notice. Karen had been removed permanently and was no longer allowed to speak on behalf of the HOA. Several neighbors came by to thank me for standing up, and a few shared their own stories about how she had pushed them around too. The next day, the board sent out an official notice. Karen had been removed permanently and was no longer allowed to speak on behalf of the HOA. Several neighbors came by to thank me for standing up, and a few shared their own stories about how she had pushed them around too. I didn't start this to make a scene. I just wanted to enjoy my home like everyone else. But sometimes standing your ground, especially when you know you've done nothing wrong, is exactly what needs to happen. If there's one thing I took away from this, it's that respect, community, and integrity matter. And no one, not even a so-called HOA Karen, can take that away. Not when you've got the right people standing beside you.